I am going to continue now in this series, The Four Stages of Spiritual Awakening, because I think it's important for us to have a real clarity with respect to what our effort is, with respect to transforming our lives and inspiring people to make a positive difference in their world. We need to have a map as to what it is that we're engaged in. Why do we gather together and support this effort? And so I'm going to share a movie. This movie is from Dr. Michael Beckwith, who originated these four stages, a way of framing our spiritual journey. And I'm wanting you to learn this map. I'm wanting you to be able to teach it to somebody else. And so this movie is going to be played every time I speak for the next 4 or 5 times I speak, because this is how long it's going to take for me to lay this all out. And I'm also wanting you to learn about your self system. In other words, this series is a training. It's to teach you how your self system runs you when you're not conscious. And if we have any sense with respect to our unconscious patterns and how they are problematic, we'd be interested to know how we can kind of override that circuitry. And so I'm wanting you to be present to this information for the purpose of teaching it to somebody else, as if that's what the effort is. And from time to time, I'm going to ask you to turn to each other and just share what you just thought you heard, so that we really begin to engage and use all of our faculties to really begin to take in this information rather than just hear it, absent of just really letting it find a way to motivate us into taking authentic action in all the ways in which we need to do so. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and start the movie, and then we'll get into today's lesson.
Many years ago, I came up with a model of stages of spiritual growth, development, and unfoldment, that we could have a wonderful conversation about what that looks like. What came to me, through me at that time, was the 4 stages: to me, by me, through me, and as me. The first stage, something happening to me, I'm a victim. I live believing that something outside of me determines my destiny, my happiness, my success, my well-being. Stage 2, by me, is the stage in which we learn to manifest. We actually use our mind, our conversation, spiritual practices, and we begin to use spiritual principles to manifest the kind of life that we can imagine. It's the manifesting stage. Stage 3, through me. It means I've done such rich work in stage 2 that I have an inner subjective belief that life is for me, that the universe is progressive, that something wonderful is always trying to happen, and I learn to yield to it, surrender to it, to give over to it. This is the stage in which you go into the zone at times. You have a peak experience. Something is operating through you. And then stage 4 is as me. The line of separation is dissolved, and I feel my oneness with all of life with no filter. Stage 1 is victim. Stage 2 is manifester. Stage 3 is being a channel or a place. Stage 4, I'm it. No separation. So in the stage 1, the victim consciousness, we feel disenfranchised from the world, disenfranchised from opportunities, disenfranchised from what we've inherited from the universal presence. We're separated, we're isolated, we're alone. In stage 2, we use what is often called mind power in the right use of our imagination, creative visualization, high, wonderful conversations, keeping our attention high to create a vibrational match of that which we would want to manifest. It's very masculine. I am using the laws. I am directing my attention. I am making something happen. Stage 3 is more feminine. I'm yielding. I'm surrendering. I'm allowing. Because I've come to an awareness that the order that we all depend on, I don't make that order. That order already exists. I'm yielding to it. I'm surrendering to it. Stage 4, the sense of separation is dissolved and I feel totally at one with life. Stage 2, I'm making something happen. Stage 3, I'm making something welcome. There's a shift. These 4 stages, when you actually study the map, you actually read about it, you actually do the practice, it enhances and expedites your spiritual growth, development, and unfoldment, because now you know why as well as what.
So those 4 stages, victim, manifester, channel, source, give us a sense of what the map is, what the journey is. And so we have to kind of recognize where we are in the evolutionary process. So if we're looking at wanting to have greater empowerments, if we have any experiences in our life where we feel diminished or otherwise our life looks and feels against us, we're sort of stuck in that first stage. And we want to understand that our work is to evolve out of victimhood, if that's where we're centered. And so just to look at this map again, there are times when we have our life against us. In other words, that's something that we do. If you have somebody the matter with you, that's something that you are doing to you. Okay, we have our life against us. The world does not have itself against us. We have aspects of our life against us. And we just need to know that that's a conditioned experience. That's not the truth. But if we don't know that it's our job to evolve out of victimhood, out of the belief that something out there has the power to eclipse my well-being and worth, if we don't understand that that's the effort, then we will just kind of be reacting to how our life looks and feels and never know that it's our job to transform what we're having into something that's for us. And if we're living in the belief that something or someone out there has the power to eclipse our well-being, then we've given our power away. But we just need to recognize that that's the first stage of development. We're awakening to the discomfort of what happens when we believe that our well-being is tied to what we're having outside of ourselves. And when it no longer works that we're happy with things that we're having, when that ceases to work, and if we don't know that it's time for us to evolve, we'll stay stuck in a kind of victimhood that paints the picture of someone or something the matter with us. How many of you can relate to that phenomenon? Every one of us should raise our hands, because this is symptomatic of what's happening in the world. We make somebody else responsible for our well-being, and then we complain about those very people, when we have yet to recognize that whenever we make somebody the matter with us, we are operational in this dimension. And it's up to us to move, to evolve. And so our way out of victimhood is in the next stage. And so when we talk about evolving out of or awakening to another dimension of ourself, the manifester phase, we need to know that that's a place where we have to move towards. But if we don't know that we're actually needing to move towards that, because that's a part of the journey, the milestone of the spiritual journey, if we don't know that there's effort involved, we will source our well-being or source our discomfort out there and be reactive, instead of recognizing that we have the power to create something that transcends all of our self-imposed limitations. So what if every one of our self-imposed limitations can be dissolved? And what if empowerment is the other side of victimhood? But the way to empowerment is learning how to manifest a greater good in your life. But in order to manifest that greater good in your life, you have to learn how to give up making somebody the matter with you. And that's not easy, because we're trained to find the source of our discomfort in someone or something out there, because God help you if you're responsible for what's happening inside of you. So when we understand that there's a process that we have to align with if we're to actually move the needle with respect to the quality of our life, the felt sense of our experience, now we can be in the question, well, what is the circuitry of how my life becomes what it becomes? What is the circuitry of how I have my life? I want you to consider this. Rather than thinking that life happens to you, I want you to think that you have your life a certain way. How is it that you have your life against you? How is it that you have someone the matter with you? How is that possible? Now, when we open to that question, how is that possible, then we need some resources. We need things like science, like brain science. We need to understand that there's a circuitry that governs how our reality gets made. And we understand in New Thought and Unity, our foundation, one of our foundation principles is that through our thoughts and our beliefs and how we're being with what we're having, we create our personal reality. And we say that as if it's what we hope happens, but then we don't engage in the very circuitry that actually works with thoughts and feelings and beliefs and perceptions and meaning making and feelings. So if we don't work with and engage the circuitry that defines us, we become defined by what we have, as opposed to use what we have as our abundance. And that's the shift I'm wanting us to understand. And so in part 1, which happened 3 weeks ago, it's archived on our website. If you're new, if this is the first time you're hearing this, this is part 2, so you need to do some homework. You need to watch the first part to get the introduction, because I've already introduced this self system. But I'm wanting us to really understand it, and once again, I'm wanting you to learn it as if that you are now being trained to transform your own agency of self, your own way in which you make meaning, your way of how you are having your life. I want you to own that and welcome that responsibility, that you are in charge of the circuitry. I mentioned last time that we can look at the top part, our habits of being, our habits of doing, our habits of how we are having our life, defines basically the way in which we take in what's happening in our world. It's the context for how we receive what's going on. And so how you receive your life is one of 4 different ways. You can have it against you, you can have it for you, you can have it through you, or you can have it as you. And the way you have your life right now depends upon the bottom circuitry, which provides the rationale for why you have your life the way you do. Your habit of how you feel about yourself, about things. Your habit of what's connected to those feelings, of your beliefs. And your habit of how you construct your meaning, what you make your life mean based upon how it looks and feels. This is conditioned, and that is a self-system that runs you when you are not conscious. Now, we have to learn to override this circuitry if we're to have agency, if we're to transform our life, and if we're to evolve out of victimhood. Because the problem is that when we are living as if someone or something is against us, we have the stories that prove it. And so the problem is that we are right. And we cannot get over our righteousness easily. Because when I am stuck in having someone the matter with me, I have reasons. I have proof. But my proof is all about my story. My proof is my story. But my story, if my story becomes my identity, then my story is not serving the greater good. My story is supporting the victimhood. My story is supporting that part of myself that is separate, that is abandoned, that is lost. And in order for me just to simply be, I have to see that my condition is happening because of forces beyond my control. Because to accept responsibility for how I feel without the capacity to make you responsible, what does that leave me with? I have to own me. I have to learn how to love me. I have to learn how to take who I am and lift it out of the BS that surrounds me. Belief system. Thought I meant something else. So the way you know you are in this victim consciousness is if you have something in your life right now that you don't want. Anything. It could be a situation, a person, a thing, an event, a condition. Anybody have anything in your life that you do not want? Raise your hand. All right. You're still in this first phase. Now here's the other side of it. You might want something that you don't have. Anybody want something that you don't have right now? Okay, those two poles create a discomfort that has you have to have somebody the matter with you because it keeps you from having to own what is arising within you. But the fact of the matter is we have to own it. And so after today, you can no longer make somebody the matter with you without going into malpractice. Now, we'll slip. And it's not a matter of fact whether we can be this perfect all of a sudden, but it's whether or not you can proceed with making somebody the matter with you without looking at what's behind this. So we have tools to look at what's behind it. We have the Q process. But sadly to say, not everybody is using that tool to really maintain the integrity of being in the journey. So I want to invite those of you who are resonating with this invitation to really renew your commitment to owning your journey of transformation and take to heart that we cannot put out energy that is about making somebody responsible for our well-being. We have to stop that because that creates an energetic discord that has all of us reaching for something outside of ourselves, for something that only can be grasped from within. And that's why we have to be in community together to do this work, because it's very hard to do it all by ourselves. So here's the key to the evolutionary journey. The key out of the present situation to get to the next one is taking the next level and practicing being in it. And so to get out of victimhood, we have to become a manifester. In other words, we have to manifest. We have to demonstrate to ourselves that we have the power that can eclipse anything that we have to diminish us. We have to convince ourselves, we have to prove to our innermost self that we are greater than what we are having as our experience. So what if being a manifester means that we can manifest our hopes and dreams, our desires, we can manifest whatever is needed for our purpose and passion. However, the first initiation into that capacity to manifest a greater good in our life is that we first have to manifest getting out of victimhood. And so the things that we must do to actually take that journey means different behaviors that create different habits of being, doing, and having that begin to reconstitute and create experiences that offer us a different story to tell. But you see, we have to feel our sense of adequacy before we can have the outer evidence of that. We have to feel a sense of our wholeness before that appears in our life in the outer. So our work has to be not about kind of rationalizing our story, but recognizing that our story no longer serves us if it has somebody responsible for our greater good. And so I'm asking, I'm pleading, can we not create one place in this world where we relinquish the need to make somebody responsible for how we are, so we can welcome ourselves home, so we can begin to love that part of ourselves that is longing for something out there. And so I'm wanting us to see that we are a microcosm of the greater world. And we are in community together on purpose. And so this is an opportunity for us in our experience of community to look at how we are bothered by each other. And welcome in the reflection that says, this is where I am not living in integrity with my inmost self. I'm making somebody responsible for my well-being. And we have to just simply step into a different practice. And so part of this effort of being in this different practice, I'm going to want us to see as ownership, because part of the journey into this next phase where now we have to take the very same thing that we're using as evidence as to why this is the matter with me. Now we have to take that very same evidence, the very same situations, and instead now say, no, what I have, this that I have is my abundance. This that I have is for me to use to create the next dimension of who and what I've come here to be. And so if I'm in the habit of making somebody responsible for me, if I'm in the habit of sourcing my well-being outside of myself, I have to create the habit of owning what I'm experiencing. And sometimes in the beginning that becomes difficult because what we have to own seems so empty or shallow or vacant. It's only because we have yet to discover ourselves. And we have allowed the circumstances of our life to distract us from the gift that we've been given and our placement in this time. And as we recognize that our time and what we're brought here forth to bring forth is too precious to squander on making somebody an exception to the principle that we're all in this together. We're all working towards this greater good. And if we cannot accomplish what I am describing, that is our work to do. If we cannot do this as a unity community, as a New Thought community, as a spiritual community, what hope is there for the world? So if this is what's really going on, if we can begin to see and recontextualize what's really going on in our separation, in our effort to try to find a place of empowerment, a place of actualizing the capacity to really matter in this world, if there's ever a time for us to be in that struggle, that search, that wonderment, now is the time. And for us to do this deeper work, for us to recognize that when I make somebody the matter with me, I have created a dimensional rift in what Spirit has created as being our safety net. I've cut some of those linkage of the very safety net. Have you ever had the experience of being the object of someone making you the matter with them? We just have to welcome all of it in to sort of see what we've created. We're bigger than this. We're bigger than our sense of not enough. It's just that we have to take care and be kind and compassionate with respect to this deeper work. Okay. I'm wrapping this up. So the Chinese saying, he who blames others has a long ways to go on the journey. He who blames himself is halfway there, but he who blames nobody has arrived. And so I haven't arrived yet. No, but I'm halfway there. And I just invite you to go halfway with me, at least that far, because that'll shift a lot. That'll shift a lot. Okay, all right. So we need to kind of see all this. So next Sunday, I'm speaking next Sunday, and then Jane will be back after that, and then I'll be better. And then so next Sunday, I'm going to be looking at the different kinds of things I must be, do, and have in order to change the story of victimhood. And to look at, we have to create experiences that generate different neural pathways, so to speak. And so in order for the circuitry to change, we have to create experiences that go against our habit of having our life against us. So next Sunday, I'll be talking about what I'm doing, what I did. All this stuff is a couple of years old now for me, but I'm wanting to share how I evolved out of my sense of victimhood around money. And I want to share with you what I did to actually work with the circuitry so that you see that this is something that you can use. All right, so for those of you who are involved in Spirit Groups is our small group ministry program. We're in the midst of that right now. Some Spirit Groups are using the Sunday Talk as a point of discussion and conversation. So if you're in a Spirit Group and you're using the Sunday Talk, here's what you take into your group session. In what areas of your life do you have someone or something against you? Just sort of presence that. And you can just look at who you have as the matter with you, and that's one area. And then what is the story you tell yourself or others about how your life is? So, there's all kinds of stories. And so you're going to be listening to stories. I want you to listen with compassion because you're going to hear stories about people who are talking about who's the matter with them. And so when we hear about those stories, we have to have compassion because those people are lost in the only mechanism that gives them any sense of relief, and that is to get empathy. Okay. So, and then what new habits of being, doing, and having are you willing to take on in order to finally own having your life the way it is? What do you need to do differently to really own what you're having as your life experience? And begin to look at the potential of what happens when that ownership really kicks in. So, I think that's all that I can share at this point in time. See you next time. God bless you.